Okay.
Hey, welcome everyone to the January 26th, 2021 meeting of the Common Council's Planning, Economic Development and Land Use Committee meeting. Tonight we'll be discussing Ordinance 46-122-20, an ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the USDO of the Code of City of Albany by renumbering such chapter. And then Resolution 512-21R regarding the reappointment of Christopher Ellis to the City of Albany Planning Board. And Resolution 612-21R, a resolution regarding the reappointment of Martin Hull to the City of Albany Planning Board. Committee members present, Judy Doche, Joyce Love, and myself, Kathy Fahey. Other council members present, Richard Conti and Ginny Farrell. Staff, John Rafael Pichardo and Michelle Andre. And planning department staff, Amy Levine from Corporation Counsel's Office and Director of Planning, Brad Glass. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'd like to begin with, I'm wondering, Michelle, maybe we should reach out to our two other planning committee members, see if they're coming. I know the time change could be confusing everybody.
I did reach out to them. You told me last week that they didn't need to come. Their attendance was not needed. So that's why I told them in the email.
No. I mean, Alfredo and.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and I also should mention former council member Leah Golby is joining us. Hi, Leah. Okay. Well, so we met last week on, I'm going to start with the resolutions for the reappointments of Christopher Ellis and Martin Hull. And let's start with Christopher Ellis. Judy, I know you were going to reach out to both of them, and I know you had questions that you didn't get answered last week.
So I had a great informative conversation with Chris Ellis yesterday. It was very pleasant, and it was a great exchange of regarding some of my concerns and some of his perspective. And I am ready to move him forward with a positive recommendation. That's a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion? All right, Joyce is a second. And any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, aye, and we'll move that one forward with a positive recommendation. And now we'll, resolution 612-21R, and that concerns the reappointment of Martin Hull to the Albany Planning Board. And
So
Judy, you were going to reach out to him as well.
yeah, and I did, and it turned out that the number I was calling was an old home phone number, and I figured that out today. So I have not been able to speak with him. I want to make it very clear that I have a tremendous amount of respect for his background, his knowledge, and what I wanted to talk to him about, and I still want to talk to him about, is my frustration with some of the lack of dialogue that goes on regarding specific issues that are raised by members of the public regarding applications, and the lack of dialogue that goes on the planning board, and the lack of information provided in the decisions. I would like to have that conversation with him before I vote on his appointment, but I think it's appropriate to move his, unless you want to wait for other members, I think it's appropriate to move his application, his resolution forward with no recommendation from the committee until, unless you want to wait for other committee members to.
Okay, Alfredo has come. Alfredo, we're discussing, Alfredo Ballerin, who's a committee member. Alfredo, we have moved forward Christopher Ellis's reappointment with a positive recommendation. Oh, Leah Golby, I see you. I don't know what you're doing. Alfredo Ballerin, you have some comments to make.
No, I'm glad we moved forward Chris's name forward. I apologize. I wasn't going to go on. It's snowing out there, and I wasn't going to be driving home with my Zoom on, as I've done in the past. Just want to be safe than sorry. So I apologize that a few minutes late. I'm okay with Judy's recommendation as well. If we want to move forward, Martin's name with no recommendation, and allow it to go to the full, so it doesn't hold up the process, and allows Judy to be able to reach out to Martin as well.
Okay, so one of the things I haven't done is had any public comment. So Leah, you're here to give public comment. I know we've gotten some written comments as well, and I hope everyone's had a chance to review those. But before I get to you, Leah, I'm sorry. Joyce, did you have any comments at all? Okay, all right. So Leah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good to see everyone. I, called in or requested to attend this Zoom to express my support for both Christopher Ellis and Martin Hull to continue serving on the planning board. I previously served on the Common Council's Planning Committee. And in fact, so when both of them were originally appointed, I took part in the interview process. And, they were, well, Martin, of course, came with a tremendous amount of experience because of his planning background. Mr. Ellis, I didn't know much about, but I have since, as both when I was on the council when they were serving and also as an active community member, I have attended planning board meetings, and I've been very impressed by both of them, by the questions that they ask, the level of engagement that they each have, and the demeanor in which they conduct themselves when often they are being abused by members of the public, which is unfortunate. They, unlike council members, these are folks who didn't sign up to get abused. Maybe you didn't sign up to get abused when you first circulated petitions, but from serving that it's part of that taking criticism. It's part of what happens when you're in public life, and and I feel especially bad for the folks who serve on these committees who are, working hard, putting in the work, putting in the effort, then people get very angry when things don't go the way that they want them to. So I'm just saying that I do strongly support both of them. In terms of Mr. Hull, I did watch the last planning committee meeting, the interviews of them. And one thing that I wrote down from what he said is that everybody wants to live in Albany now. And so that is kind of his takeaway from the work that they've been doing as members of the planning board after the USDO passed. Albany needs to be competitive. Other municipalities were ahead of us, and we are trying to catch up in terms of attracting new residents. And it's a great thing that everybody wants to live in Albany now. And I think we have both of these members of the planning board who have given their time to thank for that. So I do hope that the committee will actually entertain moving Mr. Hall's recommendation forward with a positive, moving forward a positive recommendation for Mr. Hall, because he deserves it as much as Mr. Ellis deserves it. And, you know, this is the mayor's appointment, of course, and if the council agrees with the appointment, it's your approval process, which I certainly respect. And, you know, I do hope that the committee, that the council looks, the committee that the council looks towards for how to go on things. I mean, you did a very thorough interview of both members, more thorough than I've ever seen. So anyway, I think that they both deserve a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Any other comments from council members? Okay, we'll start with Joyce first. Go ahead, Joyce.
With Mr. Hall, is this his second time? He's been,
Yes.
This is his second term.
Yes. Yes.
And how many years was the first term? How many years have he served so far?
I believe
Was
it's
it
5.
Brad, do you have that? It's 5-year term.
5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I agree with Leah. I'd like to move him out with a favorable recommendation.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. So Judy, and you had some comments.
Thank you. My goal is to not only look to support people who are well qualified as Mr. Hull is, but also to make sure that the USDO is being complied with. And that is part of what I want to have a conversation with him about in light of some concerns that I have had. I also want to note that I actually have quite a few constituents who are looking forward to moving out of the city and who have moved out of the city. Homeowners who felt as though their rights were not being protected. And I think that while we want new development in the city, I think that we have to be conscious of the fact that everybody deserves to be treated fairly under our laws, and that there is a fairly significant segment of people who are concerned that that is not happening. And as far as I'm concerned, there are legitimate concerns. That does not mean that I'm not going to vote for Mr. Hull. Again, I have a great deal of respect for him. He happens to be a constituent of mine. He is a gentleman, but it struck me as though that this is an appropriate time for me to have that kind of conversation with him. So before I reach any conclusions, I do want to have follow up on the questions that I had intended to ask. And I do think, by the way, also that members of the public really are entitled to more of an explanation regarding some of the decisions that are made when they appear to be inconsistent with the USDO. There may be an explanation, but some of the explanations that have been provided by the chair of the planning board in public are still not consistent with the USDO because they ignore the fact that an overriding principle in the USDO set forth in the first article is that then when there is a conflict between two provisions, the more restrictive provision shall apply. So I just want to say that, and that's why I will not be voting to move him out with a positive recommendation at this time. That doesn't mean that I won't necessarily be voting for him once I have a conversation with him.
Okay, thanks, Judy. I want to turn to Tom. I know you just got here. We did vote Chris Ellis out with a positive recommendation, just so you know. And now we're discussing the reappointment of Martin Hull. And I want to give you an opportunity to say anything that you'd like to say.
No, I was going to approve Chris. I'm sorry I missed the first.
Actually, Tom, let me make one more point.
Sure.
There's a motion on the floor to move Martin Hull with no recommendation to the full council.
Okay. Okay. I would.
I believe that there's actually two motions on the floor at this point. The one for no recommendation, and Joyce has made one with a positive recommendation. Usually, you dispense with one before you vote. On the ballot.
Right. I didn't think we could entertain that until we made a decision about the first motion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I'm going to support both of them with a positive. So I'm sorry I missed the first one, but apparently it got out, so that's good.
Okay, thank you. Well, then, in that case, I should point out that I would like to move him to the full council for a vote with a positive recommendation. I do think, from all that I've seen, that he's done a good job as a planning board member, and he's certainly qualified as a professional planner. And I do think that they have to take a lot into consideration when they're making some of these decisions. And I know, there's going to be decisions that people don't agree with, but on the balance, I feel like he's a member who has done what we expect of a planning board member, and takes the job very seriously. So I would like to move him forward with a positive recommendation. So I guess we can, Judy, go ahead.
So what I want to do is I want to withdraw my motion so that Joyce can make hers.
Okay, thank you. Joyce, you have a motion on the floor then. You want to put a motion on the floor, please? You have to unmute.
Okay, I moved Mr. Hall out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Okay, second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hoey. All right, any additional discussion? Alfredo, I apologize.
I supported Judy's motion to move forward with no recommendation. I don't think there would be any harm done to the candidate, because he would still be moving forward to the next common council meeting where individuals would have had an opportunity to vote up and down one way or the other. I think it's important that members, when we make these decisions, get the answers that we need to be able to move forward. So I will not be supporting a positive recommendation, because I think moving him forward with no recommendation would have been sufficed.
Okay, thank you, Alfredo. All right, we're going to take unless there's any other comments, we're going to take a vote on the motion. All in favor of moving forward with a positive recommendation, and all against. And anyone who wishes to abstain? Okay, 2 abstentions. All right, it moves forward with a positive recommendation. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we're gonna move forward to the ordinance 46/12220 concerning renumbering of the USDO. And last week we met, and I thought we had a very productive discussion on how we were going to move forward with this. We tried to divvy it up a little bit. And I know that Judy, you sent quite a few issues that you saw onto the whole committee. And I spent a lot of time with Article 4, but I'm not done. It's it is really arduous to go through this document. And I found myself, I'll just speak for myself first, you know, I had the 3 documents. So I'm trying to make sure that whole, you know, tables weren't missed and all that the first time I went through and looking for that sort of thing. And then to actually sit down and go through the clean copy, you should be isolated up in the Adirondacks or something, and the only person in the room with no television or whatever. So I don't know what the rest of you were thinking, but Brad, I don't know if you got a copy of the Judy's, and I had maybe just one or
did.
two.
My question, do I get to isolate now between now and March then in the Adirondacks?
So
I did. Did you want me to speak to any of
Whatever
those?
it takes, Brad, whatever it takes.
yeah, actually, shall we start with the things that are brought up, unless anybody else has any thoughts?
I mean, I can speak, you know, pretty directly to just Judy's comments. I did have an opportunity to go through them, and I thank her for her time put into researching those. And really, the only one, and I spoke with her this afternoon, the only one that I had a question on was the question with respect to the fees being added in. And I think, you know, we did agree upon that she may have been referencing a different version of the original document that I had. There were several that were produced in sort of rapid succession before the initial adoption in 2017. So I think we were agreeable that they were that the fees were not added. You know, they're consistent. The fees we're putting forward are consistent with what was in the original adopted document. And if anybody wants that, I do have it. It's the timestamp date on it is May 11th, 2017, 11:42 a.m. I believe. So consistent right around the adoption. And I did want to say, well, there were a few in there where a few comments that I think were left unresolved. So I'll leave that to, you know, to Judy to bring those up. I do have opinions on those, but again, thank you for all the hard work that you and other members of the committee have done. It's taken some burden off of our office and trying to get this done in a timely fashion. So.
Okay. Did anyone else make any headway, or did you want to bring up any issues that you found as you were going through the document? Alfredo.
So this weekend, I did not devote the 10 hours I did the previous weekend go through it. So I'm thank you, Kathy, for taking off a little bit of the pressure. I did get through 35 of the 43 pages of chapter 3, which was what I was assigned to go over. Of those pages, I found minor issues were similar to what we spoke about last week, where the wording is crossed out on one section, but it's in another section.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the tables are not all aligned, where you have one part of the table on one page, another part of the table on another page, and then another part of the table on another page. So it makes it a little bit difficult to read. You know, but that was it. So between the first few those, I didn't find any major differences between the final document and the proposed document. I
Okay.
had a question about the question that I asked last time about the differences in a different section of that wasn't that it was here, but it wasn't here. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to look that up, Brad. If you remember what I'm talking about, I think it was,
Just the setback 300 versus 200 feet.
yes.
Yeah, I think Judy called that out in her document as well. And I believe the correct number is, what was the correct number? I was going to say 200, but I'm going to go back and reference that. Correct. Yeah, I believe it should be 200. And that was I think that was an internal conflict that was in the original document. So obviously that would be up to the council to decide, but we think that 200 feet is the appropriate number in that case.
Can you please explain that, just so that we have a understanding for us to change it? So why 200 versus 300?
Sure. Just consulting both versions of the document here, so.
Can you, Alfredo, you want to tell us what page it's on so we can look
I'm
at
sorry,
it?
page 39 in the,
Alfredo, I think I'm going to correct myself there and say that the 300 was an error, that they both state 200 in the original document. I'm hoping that Judy can back me up on that. I'm double checking right now.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing for that one, seeing a conflict in the original document, but for some reason it was changed.
So I'm guessing there was a typo made by the general code folks. I don't remember reference to 300 square feet
so
anywhere in the document.
on page, chapter 2, page 39, that's in the red line version.
Can you just tell me the district? Is it MUCI, Alfredo?
MU/CH mixed use,
CH, got it.
table 375-2-21.
Correct. So I'm looking at the original adopted version of the USDO, and in section F in the table,
Yep.
It states are within 100 feet of property line, an R1L or R1M zoned lot on portions of lots more than 200 feet in depth, 3 stories.
Yep. And that's correct, but in the,
Right. So we need to change that to be consistent with the original document. I have no explanation for why that is like that in there.
not just, well,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Any other council members want to bring up any issues that they've found in the document?
Kathy, so, you know, I did this complete, somewhat lengthy memo, partially because I thought it would be helpful as we move this to, you know, as we do our own review and as we move it to the full Common Council review. So as you're asking that question, I guess you know, we have to do Article 4 yet.
Yes.
But the question is, and part of this is a question for Brad, what are the most helpful next steps for us to be doing? What do we do with my memo? Was this memo helpful in terms of something you can then use to provide to Gen Code, or should we be doing something different? So I'm trying to figure out the process, because if we just talk about what issues people might have, I think we need to figure out, as we're discussing that, how do we crystallize it into some sort of decision where we are finally making a recommendation to, hopefully, to move this document out of committee with a positive recommendation with certain amendments, so that the council can then consider it, so that then these changes can be made by Gen Code, or maybe actually we want, or is it that we want to make these recommendations, get Gen Code to make those changes, and then move the entire revised document out of committee? I'm not sure where, so what I want to make sure is, as we are discussing things generally, that we're committing, my thought was commit stuff to writing, so that we're all on the same page about what changes are going to be made. And I'm a little unclear about what that process is or should be.
Yeah, I think there are two options here. We can certainly provide a list of changes to Gen Code and see what their response is. I think they're within the realm of something that we can work with them on. There's also, being that there's not an overwhelming amount, although some of the new ordinance information that needs to be incorporated is a little bit detailed. I have been playing around with editing the PDF document, which seems to be an option to move forward on some of those. So I'm happy to kind of proceed on both tracks. I think the question that's outstanding in my mind is, are we coming back for another committee meeting when the document has been edited and finalized, or is this coming out with a recommendation of a list of items that we're being instructed to change? And if so, do we have that list of items completed at this point?
Well, we haven't finished going through the document. Sounds like, Alfreda, you had some more to do. I do want to finish going through Article 4. Tom, did you have anything? I can't hear.
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to look at it this weekend. I thought we had another couple of weeks before we were going to meet again on it.
Okay, so, and Judy, are you done with your?
I have done my review for everything but Article 4. I did start taking a look at the sign provisions, because some of that was things that I tinkered with, and also that I know is a little more convoluted than some of the provisions, I want to say, in terms of the lack of clarity of some of the language. And what I'm trying to do as I go through it is look at what is, I want to say, absolutely necessary to clear up inconsistencies or citation errors, or rather than tinkering so much with the language to obtain that kind of clarity, because sometimes when you're obtaining that kind of clarity, you are then changing the meaning. And I think at this point, that overall is not our goal unless there's some sort of real inconsistency there. So I do intend to do a little bit more review. Bottom line is I intend to do a little bit more review of Article 4, but as far as 1 through 3 and 5, 6, and 7, what you got last night from me in this 14-page document is all I intend to do on it, except for I have that question about what is helpful, most helpful to staff and Gen Code in terms of getting this adopted. And I want to call in Rich Conti here on this, because I think in terms of the process and in terms of, as somebody who's not on the committee, who has been who has had a certain amount of frustration with the code and the way it was, and how do we, is the document that I provided the appropriate mechanism, or should we actually get the changes in place to then make sure that it's all proofed and is consistent before we move it on to the full council? You follow me?
Richard, did you want to comment at all?
So your question is the form by which we present it to the council?
Yeah.
No, I think you'd need to have the revised document with, if you're going to do like a repeal and replace, then you need the revised document that's a revised clean copy with all the revisions you want to make.
So,
And Brad, when you say that you
I
are
think
working
JR
on
also has some,
what?
I think JR had some follow-up on that.
oh, go ahead, JR.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure because I know we're going through the clean copy, and I'm noticing in just Article 4 myself that there were some things that are different from what's been adopted and what's not. That the fact of the matter is this still has to go before the county planning board because it does make some changes. So that's something that we have to bear in mind because when I submit it to the county planning board, it has to be in the final form.
Okay.
And we also need a public hearing on this also, correct?
Yes, we need a public hearing and we have to wait till county planning board. Well, once I submit it 30 days after, we wait for a decision and then we can vote on it, but we can't vote on it until county gets back to us.
And we're talking about the technical amendments here, the ordinance.
Yes.
Yep. So does it make sense then for us to continue going through the document, the areas that we haven't finished, and then we can send the information to Brad in advance of our next meeting? And then Brad, can you incorporate those changes as best you can into the document? And then we'll have that revised document that we can send to the county planning board, have a public hearing on.
Yeah, like I said, I'll proceed on both tracks, working with the PDF document to edit it in-house, and I will communicate with general code. I don't want the general code process to hold this up. Again, it's not an overwhelming amount of changes, but I'll reach out right away. It just sometimes I don't know what their turnaround is, and I know we wanted to move quickly. So I can keep you all appraised of that. There were a few comments in Judy's memo where it was left open-ended as to which direction the council should go. So we should probably talk about a methodology for answering those questions to guide the staff or Gen Code in which changes they're making with respect to those items.
Okay, shall we go over those now, or the ones you're referring to?
Sure. I think I highlighted several of them.
While you're looking for them, Brad, one of the things I want to make sure that we're clear about, as you're going through and making amendments, you're only going to be making amendments that we are agreeing to in this process, not other things that you're finding, unless you're...
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically going from your document at this point. And I think you caught the instance that Alfredo pointed out. To the extent anything else comes up, I mean, at some point we do need to have a hard stop, because I know, for instance, the county planning board, to get that in for February, it would be, I think, on the earlier side of February to get it on their February meeting. And I know we're targeting March for the larger review. So we need to act quickly if we're gonna to answer some of those questions.
Well, let's see. So is it reasonable to have people get anything in addition to you by early next week? And should we try to set up a meeting for the following week? That would be the second week in February. Or is that not, is that,
I think it's
Cutting
going
it
to be,
too
it's
short.
usually the referral for the county is usually the first week of February, and then their meeting is later in the month, I think the third week.
so we would have to meet next week. I don't know if that's possible.
I mean, or we could try and, work through some of these now, or we could come up with a situation that either, create some sort of a default option and try and circulate that. Again, I sort of need guidance from the committee as well on that, so.
Tom?
Yeah, if we make changes, does that then have to go back to the county board? Say they look at it and, it gets put back, and then we find something and we make several changes. Does that need then to go back to the county again?
Whatever we adopt, whenever we intend to adopt has to be in its final form.
Okay. And is there a reason, I'm not in a rush. Should I be in a rush? I don't know.
If we want to get on the February agenda for the county planning board, the deadline is February 8th. So it's that Monday.
So if we wait till March for the county, what's the repercussions there?
We're trying to start the larger code review in March. And in order to do that, we wanted to have a online accessible codified document that's consistent that everyone could access for the purpose of doing that review. We can certainly, we do have a committee date set up, I think, for the 2nd to go over the data and statistics related to the first several years of administering the code. So again, we could certainly work to still provide you with the document in March 1st, but we wouldn't be able to review it, I think, until later if we get held up on that.
And what's the long range problems? Like, say you guys didn't get to work on it till April. What's the deadline that we're up against?
Alfredo's going to be really mad at me. That's number one.
I guess I understand what the goal, Tom, is to try to get the one that we really want to get our hands on as soon as possible, where we can actually go in there and start, making some sustainable changes.
So-
my concern is, my question, it shouldn't be a concern, I shouldn't say the word concern, maybe I say that word too much. My question is, why we're waiting for the county to move forward and approve any changes that we make on this? Why isn't it not possible to then get a new version of this started working on our end?
That's what I was just thinking. I think
We
if
can. It just defeats the purpose of what we're doing right now. I think we were doing the copy edits and renumbering first so that we're all referencing a consistent document that was online accessible. That's why we split this out separately from, whatever. I mean, I'm happy to go about it.
But my question, Brad, is if we already have all the numbers renumbered and we have it all done and approved here, and it's February 15th, and it doesn't get to go to the county until March, why can't we put those numbers in this version, so that, we can start reviewing it, even though we still have to approve this in March, we can start working on this in March as well. Does that make any sense?
That's exactly what I was thinking. We get the renumbering done, get it to the county. While that's pending in the county, we start working on the more substantial one. It'd be like a separate ordinance.
I'm happy to do that. I just sort of wish we had done that from the start, and then we could have done it all at once. But,
I agree 100% with you on that.
I'll get over it. I'll get over it.
And I'm okay starting all over again on this, because I've got to say this process has made it so I've gone through more of this than I did when I originally got elected. So I went through like 150 pages of this when I first got on the council, and I've gone through roughly 250 at this point, but I understand it a lot better today than I did back then, because of just seeing, the process unfold. So, I mean, I'm okay. I mean, I guess I want to get this. I want to get this. So, you know,
Well,
I don't want this to hold up this.
okay, so Brad, you were mentioning, you know, putting together the list of items that you're going to try to change. And we may be adding to that list. Can we set up a meeting? We can try to set up one more meeting next week, but you were suggesting something else, I think, weren't you?
Well, there were just a few things I know in Judy's comments that were left open-ended as to should we go in direction A or direction B? And I'm just wondering how we get to the conclusion, because I'm the one that inevitably is going to have to.
Are any of
changes.
those things that we can wait and discuss later in the next?
I don't, frankly, Kathy, I think we can make that decision if we just quickly go through some of them right now.
Okay, great. Let's
Some
do
of them-
that.
Some of them might be, I'm going through my memo and I have identified something on page 3 of my memo that relates to the development standards, dimensional standards, summary tables. And I noted that this is something where it really is kind of up to the council to make a decision as to whether there was an inconsistency between 20 feet setback or 10 feet. Brad has proposed moving it from a 20-foot minimum front setback for RV districts to a 10-foot setback. And I think basically you could go either way on that one, and I'm basically fine with him doing this, making the change so that they're both 10 feet as opposed to both of them being 20 feet. And that's because by setting a minimum setback of 10 feet, developers have a little bit more flexibility. And this is something that as the plan is rolled out, then if a further setback is desirable, then that could be discussed with the developers. So
That I'm comfortable with that. That makes sense to me. Any other thoughts by council members?
okay, let's move on. So you have your answer on that one,
Okay.
right, Brad? On
Works for
page
me.
4, what?
Works for me. Thanks.
All right. On page 4, I want to note that for appeals, I have recommended some more significant language than might be anticipated, including changing the heading, appeal decisions of the chief planning official or the chief building official. I've added in the chief building official, and I've added in references to appeals to the HRC or the planning board as may be appropriate there. So that goes a little bit beyond technical changes on the one hand. On the other hand, I think that they are appropriate clarifications to be made at this point, because people should know that you can appeal a decision of the chief building official and in what way you can do that as opposed to going to an Article 78. And there's actually language contained within that subsection that mentions that, but because it's not part of the heading, I think it should be part of the heading. And I think that there should be this other additional clarification that the HRC and planning board also serve in that capacity. So I'm just highlighting that to council members because it goes a touch beyond what you might otherwise normally anticipate that we would be doing. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that?
So we're going to add that, Judy, the underlined red?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I think that's reasonable to me.
Okay.
Just one quick question. What page is that on?
4.
No, 4 of Judy. What page on
4.
this?
You,
Okay.
Alfredo, you hold that up. We don't know which of the 3 documents you're talking about.
The red line. This is the red line.
Oh,
Oh, I've only made references to the clean copy on the page numbers.
Okay,
Tell you a section number, and I can
Okay.
tell you the page number, but I very purposely in my memo, hoping for it to be an easy usable document, made references to both the page number and the section number. And part of that is because the section number, as our document changes, the page number might change
But the
as
section.
well.
Can you-
But
can you-
some-
Can you
Go
tell
ahead.
us what that is, Judy?
so
So it's page, in the clean copy, it is page 375, semicolon V-26. Relating to appeals.
Oh, yes, I see where you're referring to chief building official down in the text in C. So why not put it up at the heading? Okay. Makes sense.
Alfreda, do you need more time on that?
no, I see it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, and Brad, please, if you see something else that should be highlighted, please jump in. But my next comment where I think that there's a question as to which way we want to go is page 7 of my memo. We are now in the definitions Article 6 on page 25 of Article 6. The definition for principal use. Now, this is a substantive change that was being made in this definition. The last sentence that reads, "A lot or building may have only one principal use," was dropped from this particular definition. And while I fully understand that, because it's kind of silly because we have mixed uses that almost by definition have more than one principal use for many of the lots. There are times when we may want to limit a lot or building to one principal use, specifically in some of the residential areas. And this change would not, there's no place where this particular requirement then is put in other provisions of the USDO. So we would be taking that out.
I agree. We'll hold off until we can have further discussion and clarification on that. My opinion. anyways.
Okay.
So we can take, we can remove that change.
Okay. And what I'll do is I will move that to my other little handy dandy list at the end of this memo for things that we might want to revisit. Okay, so the next thing that I have is was about the zoning related fees, and I do want to state that we should leave the clean copy edit as is. I had that conversation with Brad. Some fees did not show up in either my version that I have, my printed version, or in Chris Spencer's memos, but I know that I had some conversations with staff at the time about the benefits of potentially putting more of these or keeping some of these fees in. I just don't have any paper trail related to that, but Brad says that his copy of the document of the complete final USDO produced on May 15th has those fees in it, and that is good enough for me that he actually has a document date that where it has not been amended, where I'm relying on things that are online for subsequent USDO. So we're keeping that in, is my recommendation. unless anybody has any other issues. Okay, I need to watch the time because my husband needs to use my iPad for Zoom at 6:30. Page 8. I noted that a table had been removed because there were two tables that were 375-2.2-29, and this is on page 375, Article 2-49. So there was a table that was removed. And I think our choice is either to let that be because there's not a lot of substance to that, but then that would result in an inconsistency where for MUFM, we have no listing of the standards, but for every other use, we do list all the standards. So, Brad, part of the question is how
that might be a challenge from a formatting perspective, and that might be something we could tackle in the larger edit. So, I don't know if we can. We're happy to add it back in, but if I run into challenges, I don't want that to hold us up. So, I would offer either option.
Okay, so let us know if we should just put that on our agenda for the next version.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, is there something else that you had an issue on with regard? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that there's any other either or kinds of things.
Well, there's a couple on page 9 at the top regarding the 10 days notice requirement. You had suggested change in language and you gave 2 options. Is there any preference as to which one of those we move forward with?
No, that's good. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. I just didn't know what was intended by this. So it essentially, where is this? 15. It currently says if deficiencies in complying with the applicable requirements are identified, the chief planning officer shall notify the applicant with 10 days of such deficiencies. So it's really not, so it sounds like it means from the submission of the deficiencies, because the deficiencies exist at time of submission, presumably.
Yeah, I think the intent there was to provide a timetable for applicants within which they would get a response. So I guess, looking back to the intent, the first proposed change is probably the more accurate, but the second is not a problem either.
So you pick.
Unless... Okay, we'll go with within 10 days of the identification of such deficiencies.
All right.
Judy, I got lost. Are we on your document, page 9, or?
Yes.
And what paragraph? I'm looking.
The third one down, where
okay.
Where the bold says it is not clear whether the 10 days notice is to begin to tick, and so I suggested. I didn't know which one was the intent here.
Which one we're going to go with?
The identification, within 10 days of the identification of such deficiencies.
Thank you. And
my thought was, it seemed like it was from the receipt of the application, but then that requires the staff to do an immediate review and potentially is violating this if they don't identify all deficiencies within the first 10 days, when indeed one might become evident later on and need to be corrected.
Okay. And then there was one more that I saw when you were speaking to the tree and vegetation permit. The intro language that requires compliance with the provisions of 375-504 has been deleted. I would suggest for the ease of resolving the issue, we just add that intro language back in. And when we're doing the larger changes, if we want to remove that intro passage for all of the subsections in that article, we can go ahead and do that, because like you said, it's probably not necessary.
I'm fine either way.
Okay.
Anybody else have an opinion about that? I mean, essentially, we're saying we're not going to be binding ourselves from not what?
Wasn't me.
All right.
JR, did you have the county planning board date? I'm just looking it up now. If you already have.
To make it on the February calendar, it's due, we have to have it turned in February 8th.
All right. So we're going to do our best to get these changes in there on February 8th. If I run into any roadblocks, I will let everyone know. And then, we'll begin the review.
So I just want to clarify, Kathy.
Yes.
So you had suggested we hold off on making those kind of decisions, and we have made every decision that Brad was suggesting that we would need to make.
Okay.
With regard to issues that remained in my memo. I want to note for everybody's benefit again that at the end of this, while I was going through all the details, I did notice a number of things that were worthy of looking at and potentially cleaning up, some of which are more minor, but none of them, in my opinion, reach the level of being mere technical or corrections of inconsistency. So I left them as potentially for us to deal with later. So when you're looking at that last section, it starts on page 11. That's all stuff that we can also wait for.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I think at this point, what we're saying is all we need to do is go through, I think it's 90 something pages of Article 4 and raise any issues that we have with regard to maybe there's been a substantive change that we just need to alert people to, or we don't want to make at this point, or maybe there are some additional typographical errors or grammatical or technical changes that need to be made.
I think Alfredo needed to go through a couple more parts of one of his sections. Is that right, Alfredo?
Yeah, I've got 7 pages left on chapter 3.
Okay.
So have to review and then go into chapter 4.
Okay, well, let me ask, maybe we could just really quickly look at Article 4 on 375 colon 4-4. It's page 4 of that, the clean copy in Article 4. It's under contextual front yards. III there. And then C under that. If I don't know if folks are there. Are you there, Brad?
Forgive me, I had closed that version. Could you just restate the page number again?
This is the clean copy, 375, Roman numeral 4-4.
Okay.
And under contextual front yards, 3 I's and letter C, capital C. I didn't, it's confusing to me. It says will match, the front setback shall match that of the adjacent structure. But it also states where the subject lot has no adjacent lots facing the same street and improved with the primary building. So if there's no primary building on adjacent lots, how can the setback match that of an adjacent structure?
Why are you confused by that, Kathy? Oh, it is
All right,
confusing.
what's it? Yeah, I noted. I'm just getting to it, but I think I'm familiar with the conflict.
Well, you can mull it over.
Yeah, I don't know that I have an answer for that one tonight.
Okay, okay.
So maybe we'll get that in the larger edit package.
Okay, so I guess we'll plan to try to schedule another meeting as soon as we can. I think that's going to be difficult. But I think within the next, why don't we say by the end of this week, we get any other changes to you? That's kind of pushing it a little bit, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to get it to the county on the 8th, and I also, if the council could schedule that public hearing, I'd like to be in a position to do that so we can try and be as on track as we can for March.
Okay, JR, could you help with that? Because
just seeing the challenges we have with the varying versions of the document now, I know we'll be working with one.
Can you,
but
all right, I'll send Michelle a note. I think she's not feeling so great right now. Tom? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. With the changes like to the legislation, will that get put in to the copy that we're going to send off to the county? Like, the stuff with the blood plasma, the appeals process, will all that wording get put into the version that's going to be sent up?
That's the intent. Yeah, I think what the question that remains is, can I do all of that through edit in PDF, or am I going to need assistance from general code? And I'll let you know. The tables are the most problematic aspect of it.
So Tom,
General Code is the company that came up with the revised version. Is that
correct? Correct. They do all of our online codifications for codes and ordinances.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I was just talking to, go ahead, Judy.
I just want to note, Tom, that my 14-page memo contains every one of the inserts to have it comply with your ordinance. For blood plasma, I did most of that except for the insertion of the actual standards in the special use thing. And I just referred to the legislation because I ran out of time.
I saw under light manufacturing, you says this does not include blood plasma. I think that's important, since we passed an ordinance and it did go to the courts and get approved. So I just want to make sure that's in there.
Well, it has to match exactly what we passed.
Okay.
Okay. Michelle is suggesting that we add this another meeting on this ordinance on the February 3rd agenda. How does that work for everyone? I mean, we're going to be meeting anyway.
What are we meeting on already?
Well, that's a good question.
Local law G.
Local law G, so the high-speed internet.
Well, that's
And Corp Council will provide
Historic Resources Commission.
local law. Corp Council will also provide us an update on the franchise agreement with Spectrum.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thanks,
February
Michelle.
3rd is not the historic resources. That's the internet stuff.
Oh, okay.
Internet. Yeah, local law G of 2018.
The February 16 is the meeting when you were doing the historic resources issues.
Okay. So is everyone comfortable with that? And that would be when Wednesday? Is it a Wednesday, Michelle?
Yes.
Kathy, I am okay with that. I just want to encourage people to maybe plan a little more time.
So Brad, we have to get this to you by,
Well, I mean, I don't know that it necessarily has to be out of committee to be sent to the county, but ideally it would be. But, you know, I think it depends if we're going to want, if the council wants additional changes beyond what we discussed tonight. So I can go ahead and make these changes, and then it would be just a matter, I think, of voting it at a committee. But if there's still additional sections that you're going to be looking at and additional changes coming forward, then that would affect our ability to transmit it to the county.
Yeah, because we still have to do Article 4, and I'm already looking at it, and some of the charts, the tables are off from what was adopted before. And I know you said that those are the harder ones, so I just wanted to give you a heads up.
So, I mean, the February 3rd date, that would be to go through the additional sections or content, I think.
so, what are people's thoughts about sending it on to the planning department without these additional changes? The county, no, it has to be in its final shape, correct?
It has to be in its final shape that we're planning to adopt for the recoding, and then the substantive that we're planning to do afterwards can be once we adopt it.
Is there any thoughts about any additional changes being delayed as far as being instituted in the final document once we go through the other amendments? I don't know how important it is we get it to the planning department early rather than later. Does
Well,
anyone?
Kathy, I need to be confident that whatever is in Article 4 is that we fully understand what's in Article 4, and hopefully it is 100% consistent with what we have already previously adopted. We did find some substantive changes in the content, otherwise, and I don't know why we would assume that that's not going to be the case as we go through another third of the document. I mean,
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I just started taking a look at the sign thing, and I am picking up on, a few other changes. But I spend a half an hour as opposed to hours on it at this point. So.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
it sounds like we're gonna have to wait till the March county planning board meeting, Brad.
Okay.
Until we finish this.
Is that a decision that we need to make now, or can we give it a go? Brad can make the changes that are in my memo that we have discussed. And hopefully he can do that before February 3rd, which leaves, just a third as many, arguably a third as many additional changes. I'm not quite sure why we wouldn't be able to do that, make those decisions by February 3rd if we buckle down.
If I'm able to make the changes effectively in the document, I think that is doable. If we need to send that to general code and we're not meeting to discuss again until February 3rd, I highly doubt they're going to be able to send it back by February 8th. So, and I should know soon whether or not I can do that. Again, I'm just concerned with the tables and things of that nature. I think the text edit should not be a problem.
I mean, so it sounds like you're saying, Brad, if we wait till February, I'm a little confused. If we wait till February 3rd to make those final changes, then it'll be too late.
It may be. It may be too late to get it to the county planning board for the February date, which I think we're kind of pushing the envelope on that as it is.
Okay, so.
And JR can back me up on that, but
Yeah, I'm pushing it really close.
I don't see an alternative then.
okay.
Does anybody else? Alfredo?
I mean, I think we all want to make sure we go through this. And this is the revised one. And I'm going to
Deadline.
say, oh, I don't know. I don't believe that we can't start working on this on March 1st, just because we're waiting for the county to approve this in March. I don't believe that should hold us up. I mean, I know that it won't be the final voted on, but it would be, to be honest with you, 100% honest with you, I don't know why we couldn't just do all this in one, but I understand that and I respect everyone's viewpoint. So I don't think this needs to be held up. I don't think this needs to be held up, because if the county denies this, well, we're still gonna have to be working on this anyways, or whatever they denied.
Yeah,
What is
They will
that?
deny it.
I'm confused. What is that second document that you're referring to?
This is the final. This is what's voted on. This is what was the law effectively when this was printed out in 2019. So that's why I say this is the law. So when I say we go back to working on this, is what we're trying to change and make it, the hard changes, the more substantive changes. This is the proposed changes where we're trying to fix the numbering as well as the grammatical stuff. So this to me is important to make sure that we don't, because the way I'm hearing this is going to be done, we're going to by us voting on this will become the new this. So we want to make sure we get this right. So when we're going through this again, we don't, find our own errors that we could have fixed here. But so that's how I've classified it in my own mind to try to make it so that I understand all these different versions. Like this is the clean version. And you see, I still only have my one little note because I stopped after the first chapter. And going back to based on where you guys were looking back at this version, I got to go back to this one like Judy recommended, because this one is numbered completely different than the red line version. So when you guys are looking at page 4, I'm going through this and I'm like, your page 4 is completely different than my page 4. It's really on my page 6.
I feel like you're making my case for me, Alfred.
I
just want to have
hear you.
one version. That's where my hesitancy is. I'm not trying to hold things up. I just want to have one version that we're all working off of. And
But
maybe
my
we can
point
do
is,
that.
if this is the version that we present to the county, so then why can't we work off this version, whatever changes we need to make, as the county is going through their process, and then we're working at the substantial changes on this version.
A lot of this, depends on when we can get the next meeting scheduled anyway. I mean, we have a meeting scheduled for March 3rd to look at the report that Brad was talking about earlier that discusses, what's transpired these past few years. And so then that next meeting, we would start the meatier amendments. So I guess we can just agree to get our changes to Brad as soon as possible before the February 3rd meeting. And then we're going to meet and pass it out, hopefully pass it out of committee.
We'll
But we
keep the
do-
process going in some fashion or another. We'll keep the train rolling there. And we can
Okay.
commit to that. So
Any other comments before we adjourn? And I'm going to get those red sticky notes that Alfredo has.
I just want to note that February 3rd is next Wednesday, a week from
Yes.
tomorrow. So just so people have that kind of, so essentially, the best thing to do is, by the end of the weekend, if you
Yeah.
can, do your review and get your comments in.
Okay. There's nothing else? Brad, I'm sorry, John Raphael, do you have something?
I just want to clarify, we're just trying to the goal is to get this codified into general code ASAP so then we can start on the substantive part. That I just want to make sure I was clear because when Alfredo was doing this and this, I got confused.
Yes.
So we want to
that's
get,
the
okay,
goal.
that's where I'm on, that I want to get this in E code ASAP, and that's where I want, and that's what I want to say. When I say in final form, it's just the one that's being in the presentation to general code. That's what I'm saying. And then when we come back right after that, because once it's in county, there's nothing stopping us to further amend it going forward. It's just whatever we adopt, whatever we send to county has to be adopted, and then whatever we amend after that is something separate, and then it goes back to county, and then we adopt the final form.
Okay.
So it has to go to county twice. So twice.
All right. Very good. Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night. Oh, Ginny.
Have a good night, everybody.